Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
And Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome into Operation Domination. Always available on your favorite podcast app. Make sure you're checking us out on YouTube and subscribe to @FFAdviceNet for all the great shows that you got. Guess what? It's summertime. I can feel it. It's been 100 degrees here on the East Coast, man. It's been brutal. There was like no in-between period. It went from like a cool spring to like, let's go to the dog days of July. But it was getting me excited for the Fantasy Football Expo, which is coming up in the first week of August, and we're already starting to get ready for it here at the Fantasy Sports Advice Network. We'll be sponsoring the event yet again, so I wanted to point that out there. And if you haven't gotten your tickets yet to the Fantasy Football Expo, please do so, okay? You can go to the fantasyfootballexpo.com and buy your tickets today. Get the VIP for the weekend. We'll be there the whole time. When I say we, I mean myself, Dan Mater, Chase Thornton, and Adam LaRue, the crew in the building today. So like I said at the outset, we got overrated, underrated players that are interestingly falling into place as we start to get some ADPs, mostly from best ball, but drafts are starting to some degree at the very least. So first up, gents, let's just dive right into it. I got Patrick Mahomes, okay? Mahomes right now, ADP, is the quarterback 6. He's 68th overall. I'm going to kick it to you guys first. Adam, is he overrated or is he underrated? Or just right?
I think he's either just right or overrated. I can't quite decide. I think he's right on that threshold where I think he should be somewhere between 6 to 8. But I mean, let's keep it a spade. He was under 7 yards per attempt this past season. He is someone who has, for each of the last 3 seasons, has been on the decline in terms of pretty much any metric you can come up with. Touchdown percentage is down. Passer rating overall down. PFF pass rating down. PFF offensive rating down. And it's been a straight linear trajectory. Pass attempts down. Just down. Down signs all across the board. Each of the last 2 seasons, we've gone into the offseason going, well, but they've changed things and it's going to get better. And I'm, for one, done assuming that that's going to be the case. I hope it is. I want to see the star that Mahomes has been and has the talent to continue to be. But at this point, I'm going to stop being burned by it. I think the talent is there, but he just isn't ripping it down the field. And whether that's the result of the offense, whether that's a result of the offensive coordinators or they had injuries at the wide receiver position last year, and I get that. But for me personally, I'm going to stop gambling on it until it actually corrects itself on the field.
Interesting. Chase, you echo those sentiments.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit high for me. It feels a little early for me. I'm probably much more on the, like he mentioned 6 to 8. I'm much more on that 8 to 9. I think that he's better than where he finished last season as quarterback 12 overall and quarterback 11 in points per game last season. But that's kind of who he's been the last 2 years. Now, last year, you can obviously throw out there, okay, yeah, but Rashee Rice, the injury, that didn't help anything, of course. And he had his running game was all screwed up because Pacheco was injured. And those were all valid takes. And so this year we expect that, okay, he's going to have Rice on the field. We hope he should have Worthy, and Worthy had that kind of late season breakout where it looked like they might have something rolling in there. Pacheco should be healthy, so they should be a little bit better in their run game, you would think. So he might be a little better than last season, but I think the days of him with 40 some, touchdowns and scoring 400 fantasy points for us, I think those, he's going to be hard pressed to get back to that. Travis Kelce, despite, the fact that he is still a top level tight end and a starting tight end in this league, he's starting to drop off a little bit as well. Father time will come for him eventually completely and kick him in the tail. So yeah, I like Patrick Mahomes as a starting quarterback, but I like him as a later starting quarterback. If people want to be taking him at 6 there in that 7th round or 6th round or so, you guys go ahead and do that. I'm with Adam there. I'm probably not biting on that, but I do think that 6 is a little bit high.
Well, then this is unanimous. Like Patrick Mahomes for me is also an overrated value at the quarterback 6 and 68th overall. I mean, I'm going to expand upon what you guys just talked about. Last 2 years, he's been the quarterback 12, quarterback 11 on a points per game basis amongst qualified quarterbacks, right? Travis Kelce, he's getting older, coming off of one of his worst seasons. Rashee Rice, he may not be suspended. We still don't know. Xavier Worthy kind of gets left as the only dependable option because you have to factor in Hollywood Browns' injury history. Like, we don't know if he's going to make it to a season. He couldn't make it to the week 1 last year. Here's the key, and this, you guys mentioned it. From 2018 to 2022, Mahomes was averaging like 8.1 yards per attempt, 8.67 air yards per attempt. And then the last 2 seasons, 6.9, 6.83. I mean, we're talking a yard to 2 yards less. Last year, he was 26, 36, and then he was 34th in deep ball completion percentage. The deep ball has to come back from Mahomes. Now, we could play a little caveat here, which is, well, Andy Reid did come out and say during the OTAs that he wants to get this Chiefs offense back to that. So he's addressing that situation. But he hasn't gone over 30 touchdowns since 2022. Right now, 2 rounds later, you could have Dak Prescott. 3 rounds later, you could have Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff. 4 rounds later, you could have Justin Fields or Justin Herbert. I'm not taking him there. So, it's unanimous there. Mahomes at QB6. Maybe at some point he bounces back. Maybe if Rashee Rice isn't suspended, we could be having a different conversation to get closer to the season. But you are drafting him right now at maybe beyond his ceiling at this point from what we've seen over the past couple of years. So it's going to be interesting to see. There's another player, though, that we got to talk about who's been in the fantasy limelight for a long time, and that's CMC. So right now, he's the RB6 coming off the board. He's 14th overall. So Chase, to you, is that an overrated or underrated mark for the guy who used to be the number 1 fantasy player in all of fantasy football?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to have recency bias, but it seems like there's a very select window of opportunity in the last several years where it's not recently that CMC's been injured and hasn't screwed you over from where you took him. Now, when he's on the field and healthy, he's still good. But listen, last year, I was on that bandwagon last year. I said, CMC is just too dang good. And at the time, we didn't necessarily have any of the news that he was never going to be able to play or that he was only going to play, 20 minutes or whatever the whole season. I was on that bandwagon. I said, hey, CMC, when he's on the field, is still a unique fantasy asset that you have to have. But listen, guys, he played weeks 10, 11, 12, 13 last season. You know who else played weeks 10, 11, 12, 13 only? Minnesota kicker Parker Romo. You could have taken Parker Romo, number 1 overall last season, instead of CMC like you did, and you actually would have scored more points on the season. It would have helped you more that way. That's how much taking Christian McCaffrey in the first round last year set everybody back who did it. He scored 40.3 points the entire season. And actually, of the 4 games that he played, the first 2 he had, he was usable, serviceable, but it wasn't CMC. It wasn't like the 23 points that you're hoping to get a game from him kind of thing. I cannot take him. I cannot, in good faith, counsel anybody to take him as the running back 6, 14th overall right now, when we just have no idea what we're going to get from him. Debo's gone. We don't know what we're going to get from Brandon Ayuk. I like Ayuk this season, but we don't know. There's not a lot of guarantee right now what that offense is going to look like around him, let alone what he's going to look like. And is he going to be and stay, as is always the question with him, healthy? So no, running back 6, no. If he drops to a running back 2 level in my personal draft, if I'm in a draft and now he drops past that running back, 12 level or whatever, then it becomes a point to me where the risk is equal to the reward, or the reward maybe is equal to or outweighs the risk if he drops that far. But I will not be taking him as an RB1, and I don't think anybody else should be either.
Ooh, not going to take him as an RB1 at all. That's interesting to me because there's a lot of upside potentially there. I don't know. Adam, how do you feel about this one?
I think he is Very similar to Mahomes, if not maybe a little bit closer to accurate. I might push him to 7, but I think he's functionally right where he should be. I think 7 is about right. I think you get after that first tier of guys, your Saquons, your Henrys, a couple of the guys with like the upside and the youth, and then Henry kind of living on his own little island where age doesn't matter. And then Henry is the risk, or McCaffrey rather, is the risk reward pick, because I think everyone else behind him has a significantly lower ceiling. Now the case could be made, and this is what I would make, is that I think Genty should be higher. He is the 7. I would rather take Genty because I think I feel a lot safer with the lower tread. But after that, we're dealing with a lot of guys who maybe is the same level of risk. No, but like either a smaller guy, and Kyron, who is very volume dependent, Josh Jacobs, who's also older and also has is someone who has been topsy-turvy in terms of his consistency year to year. And then guys who are in flux. We've talked about Achane not being a volume guy. We've talked about Mixon. They've wanted to add other guys to that room. Breece Hall, they've wanted to look at other options. Like after that, the running back room, I think, gets really, really weird. So to me, I think McCaffrey's right where he should be, because I think that of the players who can compete with your Saquons, Bijans, Henrys, Jonathan Taylors, Jahmyr Gibbs, like he's the last one, and Genty. Like those are the last 2 guys. So I think that in terms of upside, you're not getting that type of production from anyone behind him.
Sorry to chase 2-1, but I'm with Adam on this one. He kind of comes in just right for me. Everything you brought up, Chase, is valid. Like CMC is an injury risk, 100%. He is turning 29 years old, but he's healthy right now. And when you put CMC with that Shanahan offense, with the schedule that they have coming up, it becomes tantalizing. We know what his upside is if he is healthy. It's the number 1 non-quarterback fantasy scorer for the season. So it's hard to give up on that upside. I think the fact that he is going in the second round, I know RB6, it sounds high, but he's going in the second round in 12-man leagues. I think that litigates some of the risk, because let's say, injuries, he missed a bunch of games, who knows? But let's say he loses efficiency. Let's say he's coming back off his injury. He's not CMC himself, right? I think that's the other concern here. Well, he's still probably a low-end RB1 in that offense. So it's the second round. He's not going to necessarily kill you if that's where you decide to draft him. So I think the price is right in that sense. I mean, this guy's been a top 5 running back every single year he's been healthy. Every single one. So I'm with you. I think, Adam, you mentioned it. Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, they're all going right there. But to me, him and Taylor, maybe Achane, if the Miami offense was to get efficient again, are the only ones in that group that I think has like true RB1 potential besides CMC. And we've seen it twice now in CMC's career. So I'm going to lean towards it being just right. But Chase, I hear you on some of the risk that comes with that.
Those are all the same. They're all the same arguments I was making last year for why you should be taking him with your first round pick. It's just that, when healthy, yes, I have always said that when healthy, he is a special, unique, historical fantasy asset. But I just don't know at 29 if I'm ready to trust him like that ever again.
No, and that's fair. And look, a few weeks from now, when we talk about some of our bold takes, I might be talking about Saquon Barkley and why I will not be making that, but we'll save that for a few weeks from now. Just a little tease for you guys what's coming down the pipe. All right, so let's talk a little Malik Nabers. Now, I know it's hard to say overrated, underrated. It's hard to be, underrated when you're coming up as the wide receiver 4 in ADP and 8th overall, but this is still a name that I think we have to talk about because of the surrounding circumstances of the Giants. So, Adam, I think I started with Chase last time, right? So, Adam, we'll just go back to you. Malik Nabers, when you look at him as your wide receiver 4, are you comfortable with that price tag, or is he overrated?
To me, he's overrated. I think he's a little bit further down as a wide receiver 1. I do think he's a wide receiver 1, but this is an offense that I think is going to be fairly inept this season. I think, candidly, that this quarterback room could end up being a clown show by season's end, where we see a variety of faces and there's some hilarity with all of them. it's a mess, and I think it's going to be, an uphill battle for him to get the consistent production that he wants. Because, like, let's face it, not only are there three bad quarterbacks together, but it's three bad quarterbacks who are bad in different ways and succeed in different ways. So there's going to, every time that the Giants switch, and I'm fairly confident we're going to see all three every single time. It's going to be an adjustment. Like, that to me, it's gross. And, like, let's not pretend. Look, Malik Nabers had a fantastic rookie season. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. However, 11 fantasy points a game, it nets out to 12, but it is very much so in a crowded area of like 11.5 to 10.5, where there's just like 10 guys kind of all vying for similar positioning, where there's not like some massive delta between that range of player, right? So to me, I think he's further back in the wide receiver one category. He's a great talent. I think he's going to take another step, but the talent around him has somehow, some way, at best, slightly improved. Best case scenario, it's slightly improved. There's a chance that it's the same or worse. And for those reasons, especially, like, would anyone be shocked if the coaching situation changes, flips midseason? Like, that's not out of the question, right? So like, there's just so much chaos that can happen here. It's not Malik Nabers' fault. I think Malik Nabers is capable of being that type of player. But I don't think that this is the year to bet on him. At least I'm not going to.
Well, that high. It's funny that you say that. I don't disagree. And Chase, I don't know if you're going to play devil's advocate or not, but I mean, he had 4 different quarterbacks last year. I mean, we watched him play with Tim Boyle at one point. Like, I don't know, Chase, go ahead, buddy.
No, that's kind of where I was going with it, while absolutely not disagreeing with Adam there. I have too many questions with this New York Giants team. The one question I actually don't have with this team is Malik Nabers. However, I'm not truthing him enough that I think I'm going to take him at wide receiver 4 in the first round. There's just too much else going on with that team. Now, yeah, he had a what should have been a year-killing murderer's row of quarterbacks last season, between Daniel Jones, who didn't even finish with the team after signing that big high-power extension for him too, Drew Lock, Tim Boyle, Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets there. He had no one competent throwing him the football last year, pretty much. And that team looked like to be in a mess. And he still put up a excellent season. He was a wide receiver 1. He was wide receiver 7 overall, 8 in points per game. I mean, this is a guy that still put up those kinds of numbers that you want to see from a wide receiver 1. But I think that's more where he lands back this season again, is that later wide receiver 1. I don't have him as a top half wide receiver 1. Is the talent there for him? Yes. Is the talent there around him? Is the situation there around him? Like Adam said, there's just too many questions there for me to be spending a first round pick on Malik Nabers. Love him as a player. Love him in my dynasty shares that I have of him. Will not be spending my 8th overall pick on him this season in redraft. Second round. Now we can.
Yeah. I mean, so it's unanimous. Now, that drop might be a little dramatic for Malik Nabers. I'm not saying this guy's going to fall off the planet. Well, it's not going to twist it here. But I'm with you guys. Like, I wanted to bring up the fact that he did deal with 4 different crappy quarterbacks to kind of make this point. I don't know if their quarterback situation is any better. Like, on paper, it should be better, right? Adam, I totally agree with your point of, I think we're going to see multiple Giants quarterbacks. Whether it's 3, it's going to be at least 2. Maybe it is all 3. I tend to agree with you. It probably will be, frankly. But let's start with the guy who we're penciling in to be the week 1 starter, which is Russell Wilson, right? Even if it's Wilson, I have concerns about a wide receiver 1 getting fed to that level, right? Because he's only had the top receiver he's had finish in the last 3 years was Jerry Jeudy back in Denver, and he was the wide receiver 21. And that's the top receiver finish he's had. Last year, George Pickens, who's supposed to be this great example of what a Russell Wilson receiver you want them to be, right? Because of the moon ball, which he only breaks out 1 every 10 throws now. People seem to not be able to receive that, but the moon ball, he wants that prototypical go down the field type of wide receiver. He only had a 25% target share, which is decent, but that's not wide receiver 1 level numbers. And let's not forget that was an Arthur Smith passing attack. So not only did you have 1 target to go to, you're not throwing the ball that much, and it was only 25% of the time. Malik Nabers had 35% target share, like all over the place. And he's not supposed to be the quote unquote type of wide receiver Russell Wilson targets all the time. Now, I think that part kind of goes out the window. It just leads to a lot of questions. Now, I will say this. If you have Malik Nabers and you go on a run with Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback, my hat's off to you, because he might be wide receiver 1 during that stretch. But I think we all know that even if Winston gets a shot, it won't be the rest of the year. We'll wind up seeing Jackson Dart at some point if Jackson Dart doesn't just leapfrog them all together with what seems to be going on. Adam, you mentioned the players around him. Chase, you mentioned the players around him. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going one spot behind. Nico Collins, Brian Thomas. One round later, like in the second round, you're getting guys like Drake London, Ladd McConkey, A.J. Brown. 2 rounds later, the third round, we're talking Garrett Wilson. It's an overrated situation when you have that level. There's not a big tier break, I think, between him and all those guys I just mentioned, where you're going, in some cases, multiple rounds lower and have situations I like a hell of a lot more. So, Malik Nabers, I love you, but man, the Giants are just doing you no favors. All right, so here's another one that I think is interesting, and a lot of people are pulling their hair out over, because there's a lot of discussion all the time about tight ends, top tight ends especially. Where do you draft them? Where are they worth it to you? Right now, Sam LaPorta is the tight end 4 overall. He's 64th overall amongst all players for the flex. We saw him have a sophomore slump. Chase, when you see Sam LaPorta, tight end 4, I think you're projecting at that ADP that he's going to resurge back from what we saw in the second year. So is he overrated or underrated from that standpoint?
Honestly, I think he's probably not rated all that off in terms of his position ranking, but I'm not taking him at 64 overall. I don't like his overall where he's sitting. I don't want to have to take Sam LaPorta that high. Listen, there's no bigger Sam LaPorta fan than I am. I've got a ton of shares of him across Dynasty. I was big onto him last year. I had him in multiple redraft leagues last year. And while he didn't return that ADP that everybody spent on him, I mean, let's not forget, he was still a top 10 top 8, top 7 tight end for you last year. Top 7 overall, top 8 points per game. And, yeah, there was touchdown regression. There was a little bit of touchdown regression. There was a ton of target regression, and he still was a startable tight end. I think that's probably pretty close for him, because once you get past Bowers, once you get past Kittle, once you get past McBride, who is maybe my new man crush at the position, once you get past those 3 guys, it's kind of, I mean, anybody's as good as anybody else any given week. I think those 3 guys have the situations. I think they have the talent. I think they have the rapport with their current, teams that they'll be your top 3. And I'm pretty confident saying that, and I will draft them accordingly. Once you get past them, it's kind of fruit basket upset. So Sam LaPorta at number 4. Yeah. I mean, he's as good as anywhere else. I like him there as a tight end at 4, but I don't like him at 64 overall. So his position ranking for me is pretty close. His overall, where he's going, though, I would not be spending time on him at that point.
I will say we're seeing that pretty similar. Adam, I want to get your thoughts, though.
I think we're probably the same right across the board. I echo pretty much everything there. Look, I think that tight end 4 is correct. I think he is the most likely player to be valuable for you after those top 3. I'm not going to be the guy who drafts the tier after those top 3 first. I'm not going to be the first one reaching into that basket. I just won't be in any leagues. I can confidently
especially in round 6. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So if there's a guy to pick for that spot, then I think it is LaPorta. But in terms of overall, like, I'm just, if I don't get one of those top 3, then I'm probably not drafting tight end until round 8.
And it's a new offense. It's a new offensive situation this year, too. I mean, we don't necessarily know what he's going to look like.
They could not maximize him with Ben Johnson. They could not properly feed all of their weapons with Ben Johnson. Good Lord. and that's the most contested portion of the field for this offense, right? Because Amon-Ra St. Brown works in a similar area. And the running backs work in the similar area. Like, it's tough. I think that the reason he is that clear 4, Is he someone who, if nothing else, has shown that he is a very strong red zone target for them? Like, he is one of the first choices for red zone. And that kind of stabilizes you at tight end. But you could not pin me down on like a confident answer as far as targets. If you told me,
touchdown regression for him last year was falling from 10 to 7. So he tied for 4th in the league in tight end touchdowns.
Yeah,
like
that's
that,
still
that was
good,
just touchdown
but
regression.
he went from 140 targets to 85.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing. That's exactly what I was going to expound upon. And look, I think Sam LaPorta, when it comes to his ranking, he could be tight end 4, he could be tight end 8. I wouldn't be surprised by either direction when it comes down to it, right? And he finished as tight end 8 on points per game last season. You guys touched on it. It's the targets, right? The target decrease, a 37 target decrease from last year, 21% target share to 16% target share. It's in direct correlation with Jameson Williams, who went from 10% to 19% last season. And the only guy I've really heard the new Lions offensive coordinator, Johnny Morton, talk up this season so far is Jameson Williams having a breakout year. And I don't know if he's definitely having a breakout year or not, but I do know last season was not a Jameson Williams breakout year, which to me stands the reason as he starts another year, he might get over that 20% threshold. Well, if Jameson Williams continues to go up, and that seemed to be a direct correlation to Sam LaPorta's shares going down, I don't know how you draft him at tight end 4 when that's clearly his ceiling coming into this season, unless you get super lucky on touchdowns, which we'll see. I mean, maybe he can get 14 touchdowns, and it doesn't matter how much target share he got. We've seen that with George Kittle in years past, but that's not something I'm necessarily banking on either. And let's look at it this way. So 64, I think we all agree that that's really the problem that we have the most of, right? Right now, he is 2 rounds ahead of Travis Kelce, 3 rounds ahead of Mark Andrews. I'll take Travis Kelce in the 8th and Mark Andrews in the 9th over taking Sam LaPorta in the 6th. I think it kind of melts down to that. Even with Kelce coming off of a bad year aging, even with Andrews coming off of a not so great year aging, they were still both top 6 tight ends or top 7 tight ends last year. I think Andrews finished tight end 7 point per game basis because he got on a run at the end of the year and got in the back in the end zone. Don't forget he was in a car accident. That might have something to do with why he started off so slow in the beginning of the season. So, yeah, I'm with you. The overall value is just not there when there's a direct correlation with a particular player looking to break out. And that seems to be causing the biggest issues for Sam LaPorta. All right, so let's move back on. We got more players to talk about. So Kyler Murray, getting back to the quarterback position. This is another guy that you're tantalized by, right? This is somebody who's had experience finishing in the top 5 of fantasy football purposes, hasn't been there for a while, but you know he could be a cheat code at any moment, which is why I think people mull over this guy, especially when he's quarterback 9 and 90th overall as of this moment. So, Chase, let's go to you on this one. Kyler Murray, QB9, overrated, underrated, just right.
Honestly, I think that's about dead on for him. I'm okay with him there. I don't think it's egregiously high, and I definitely wouldn't be going any lower than a QB1 with him, whether I'm in a 10-team league or a 12-team league or bigger. Last year he's QB10 overall. He was QB12 in points per game. Okay, and ended up as the 15th. He scored the 15th most points in fantasy football among offensive players. Right. I mean, we know quarterbacks score a lot more than other players, so that's not a shock that he was a top scoring player. But you're talking about taking him as QB9 when, in theory, he should get a little bit more out of Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. Trey Benson, we're thinking might be able to mix into things more, even if James Conner goes down. I like that running game overall there, the tandem that they have in the backfield there. I think that there's no reason to expect that he's going to drop off from last season. And honestly, last season, I mean, he was about a point per game, not about a half point to a point per game less than what he had been the previous couple of seasons. It's not like he dropped off much, I think, and he can do better this year even because I expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to take that step forward. I still think McBride is one of the class players in the league at his position. I'm kind of excited to see what Kyler Murray can do. I don't want to be jumping on him earlier than everybody else. I won't be reaching for him, but I think QB9 right there in that, 8th, 9th round or so. Yeah, I could take that. I'm fine with him there.
Okay. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I hate to just kind of agree all the way through, but like I agree. I think he's about right. Like I think he when you get into that next tier of quarterbacks where you're just trying to get serviceable QB1, like I think he's got upside to be a little bit better than that, but not crazy upside. I don't know that, I don't think he can break into the tier 1, but can he top tier 2? I think he can. But otherwise you get someone who is more or less consistent. You get someone who can make plays with their feet. He kind of rebounded in that regard a little bit this last season. Could you have wanted him to run a little bit more? Yeah, but it did go up towards the end of the season, especially. I don't know that he's the passer he was pre-knee injury, but it was an improvement over the previous season when he had to come back from said injury. And kind of to that point, like he gets Marvin Harrison another year, and he gets another season with Drew Petzing, who came over while he was hurt. So really, like, while Petzing's in his third season there, it's like a year and a half of Kyler in this offense. So I think that there's a lot of positive signs for him to be as good as he was this past season or a little bit better. And for those reasons, I think he's on the fringes of, he's a back end QB1 in the middle of a tier with the upside to potentially compete for the top of that tier. So I think 9 is perfect.
Yeah, we're unanimous again. And I swear to you guys, we're not agreeing here on purpose, but it is kind of working out that way with where we're feeling this at. So he was QB 12 last year on a points per game basis amongst qualified quarterbacks, right? Because I want to throw out the Joe Miltons and Jimmy Garoppolo's of the
Jimmy Garoppolo
1 week and drop 20 points. Yeah. So you guys kind of mentioned it as far as the passing, right? Like, his passing was along the lines of his career. In fact, his accuracy numbers were actually a bit more efficient than they had been in any other point in his career. And that's kind of saying something, being I wasn't overly enthralled with the passing game in general outside of Terry McBride. The key's been the rushing, right? Like 2020, he ran over 800 yards. He's been between 400 and 600 yards really ever since, besides the year he goes to the ACL. And that's enough to establish him as a low-end QB1 floor. Like, that's going to get you there, plain and simple. Can he get back to that? He talked about how last year he never felt fully healthy, and that he mentioned this, he wants to get back to running a little bit more this season. But we'll see if that winds up being the case. I think the key is going to be, is Petzing willing to design him a few more runs, or we totally dependent on, Kyler Murray scrambling a little bit more, because they didn't really design as many as we're used to seeing Kyler get last season, obviously in a direct correlation to that ACL coming off of it. So if he's a little bit healthier and then run him a little bit more, there's definitely upside to get over this QB9 spot. But at the same time, if he keeps running 400, 600 yards, he's not a threat to go 4,000 yards passing. He's not a threat to go to 30 touchdowns passing. Like, it's just not. So when he goes there, round 9, yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. That winds up being like just right kind of area for Kyler Murray. Let's go to another aging player, aging running back. That's going to be the name of today when it comes to overrated, underrated. Alvin Kamara, ADP, RB18. His 50th overall. It's really interesting because Kamara's never finished that low. So I'm going to be kind of curious to see what you guys say. Chase, let's go to you.
Yeah, man, I was not in on Alvin Kamara last year. And then he just came out and kind of did what Alvin Kamara always does and just played, damn good football, even for a team that floundered after the first, quarter of the season or so. Having him at 18, there's no way. There's no way I'm taking him that low. There's no way I think that he's that low. Even if this team, flounders again, because again, this might be the worst quarterback situation in the league in terms of, who is definitely going to be their starter. We're talking Spencer Rattler or we're talking Tyler Shuck. Either way, you're talking a rookie or you're talking an undersized guy who was not great last season, but at least has been there and run the offense. Or you're talking Jake Haener, for crying out loud. So, I mean, it's not going to be a great offensive situation. I don't think it's going to be a great offensive team, but Alvin Kamara still, with all of the cluster, that was last season, finishes RB10 overall, 6 on a points per game basis, and, had a fine season. I mean, he rushed for 950 yards. That's his career high last season. And it was not his career high in attempts even. So he still saw 68 targets. I think there's a chance, especially knowing that he's going to be playing the full year with a young quarterback, there's a chance he sees more targets than that this season. Or so 89 targets. Sorry, he had 68 receptions. I think there's a chance we see him threaten 100 targets like he was the first 3-4 years of his career. I can't make a case for Alvin Kamara being only the running back 18 in any way, shape, or form. If that's the kind of discount people are giving you on Alvin Kamara, I say jump on that, especially if you're taking him as your RB2. I mean, if you can get Alvin Kamara as your RB2, yeah, jump on that, because 18 is way too low. 18 is way too low for me.
All right, Adam, do you agree with a 30-year-old running back?
Yeah, way too low. Like probably 4 or 5 spots too low. I think Alvin Kamara. I mean, look, I don't want to just retread over what Chase said, so I'm gonna agree with what Chase said. But to add to it, I was really impressed with Kellen Moore last season. What specifically, as it relates to Alvin Kamara, is that he adapted what he does to a completely different team than what he worked with in Dallas. That was not him just like running what he did in Dallas. He adapted to the talent there. He adapted to the playmakers there. He was not doing the stuff he did with Saquon and the stuff he did with Jalen Hurts in Dallas. He switched it and molded his offense for Philadelphia. If you were to talk about a single offensive player who is the identity of the New Orleans Saints that you can count on, to me, that player is Alvin Kamara. And I think that you start building this offense around Alvin Kamara. You could say Chris Olave. My problem with that, and maybe they do because they're not, whether they see it this way or not, is exactly what Chase is doing. It's the noggin. It's you can't depend on him being healthy. Obviously, the passing game is going to largely run through him. But from a game-by-game basis, look, like Alvin Kamara gets hurt. Let's not kid ourselves, but okay, cool. You miss 2 games a year, and the rest of the season, you are our offense. Like, regardless of what craziness happens with this quarterback situation, like, you're going to be the guy. You're the leader in this locker room. And, I just think that from an identity perspective, they're going to build around Alvin Kamara. And with that, I think he's incredibly undervalued. And then just realistically, he's hovered on the fringes of running back 1 territory pretty much his entire career. He's been between 10 and 14, 15 the entire time. So why am I just suddenly dropping him because of age when, he's felt old for a while and he hasn't really shown any amount of fall off. At least the last 4 or 5 years, there was a period where he was more efficient, more explosive 6 years ago, but Alvin Kamara last year looked pretty much the same as the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that. On tape, to me at least, he did. And we've seen backs who don't get a ton of rushing volume, and backs who make a lot of their money catching the ball last a little bit longer. So for all of these reasons, I think he's in a position where he can hang on for a little bit. And he's kind of the opposite of Mahomes. Until I see it fall off, I'm just going to keep riding it. Because I think he's been a value for a while because people are afraid of his age.
I didn't think I was ever going to hit that drop tonight. So finally, we got an underrated player here that we all agree upon with Alvin Kamara. You said it. He's never been worse than RB16 on points per game basis. Never. I don't care that he's 30, to your point. He's averaged 4 yards per carry over the past 3 years. But he's getting 80-plus targets every single season, even when he's only playing 15 games. It just doesn't matter. His numbers are replicable. That's the big thing. When you got a running back who's not getting 300 carries, he's getting more 220, 200, somewhere in there, but he's getting you 1,500 scrimmage yards on 317 opportunities. Because like Chase said earlier, he's got 89 targets this past year. He's going to be the safety blanket, whether it's Shuck, whether it's Hayner, whether it's Rattler. He's going to be a safety blanket. It's going to be check down city. The other thing I'm going to add in here that you guys didn't mention, this might be a sneaky good offensive line. Cesar Ruiz is back from injury. Eric McCoy is the center now. They drafted Calvin Banks. Trevor Penning is finally playing his actual NFL position of guard instead of sticking him out as tackle. This might be a sneaky good offensive line on top of it. So I'm with you. There's no way I'm waiting until RB18 to take Alvin Kamara. I don't care that he's 30 years old. Here's who's going around him: Kenneth Walker, RJ Harvey, Joe Mixon, Chuba Hubbard. That's who's surrounded by. I'm taking him over all those players. So yeah,
I'm
100% under. Yeah, 100% underrated on Alvin Kamara.
And his 900. Sorry, I don't. His 950 yards rushing last year was only done on 4.2 yards a carry too. It wasn't like he was averaging some ungodly number that, like you said, is not replicable. Everything he did last season is exactly in line with what he can and should be able to do this season. Running back 18 is nuts.
No, 100%. So here's another player who I've been very bullish on, but we'll see about the value. So Ladd McConkey, ADP, wide receiver 11, 19th overall. Adam, let's start with you on this one. He's going to his second year with Justin Herbert. What do you think? Is wide receiver 11 from Ladd McConkey overrated, underrated, just right?
I think he's just right. I think right around fringe wide receiver 1 is correct. I am also bullish on him. I think he's someone who improved a lot over especially that back stretch. I think this passing offense became a bigger part of what the Chargers were doing over this back stretch. He, for example, had no double-digit target games until week 12, and he finished the season, if you include playoffs, with 3. They all came towards that backstretch. His 100-yard games came towards that backstretch. He had almost 200 yards in the playoff game. I think benefits a lot from getting another highly drafted receiver to go alongside of him, especially someone who complements his skill set extremely, extremely well. It's another year in the offense, and it's one that I think this Chargers team as a whole is kind of on their way to being able to break out. I think the Hampton pick is good for them. I think also getting Harris into them. I know we've talked about it from a fantasy perspective as that being a negative, but in terms of this offense, I think that they have significantly improved their offense, their ability to go play action, but as well their ability to, kind of stay even, be unpredictable, have multiple options instead of just Ladd's the only open guy. We have to throw it to Ladd. They've got a lot of options, which it's not like he got unforeseeable volume, and he's someone who had a high yards per route run in college. He's someone who separated really well in college, and those things continued. So it's not like these are things that we kind of expected. So I think it's going to continue, if not improve, for Ladd McConkey.
Okay, so Chase, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I think he's pretty much dead on there. I think a low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 type. It's exactly what he did last year as a rookie in this league. And yeah, like you talked about, you brought up the idea that Trey Harris is there now, but Quentin Johnston is not what everybody wanted him to be when he came into the league. But honestly, he didn't have a terrible season last year. He actually looked like a NFL wide receiver at times. He had 8 touchdowns. He had 91 targets, 55 catches, and 8 touchdowns last year, over 700 yards. So now you throw in the idea that now they've got Ladd and Quentin Johnston and Trey Harris, who I know this show, we're all excited to see him. Plus they should get, in my opinion, I think they should get improved output at tight end, especially if they want to use their new guy that they drafted at tight end. Plus, I like the possibility of that running game right now with not just their new draftee Hampton, but also with Najee Harris. I think the two of them are going to be nice together because I don't think you have to do anything different when you have, no matter who's on the field. That offense could be fun to watch this season. And Ladd, if he takes any kind of step forward in terms of his development as a player, which should be normal, should be natural in year 2, I would think. He seems like that kind of player. There's no reason he can't replicate what he did last year. And we just said he was a low-end wide receiver 1 last year. And that was with, like Adam said, not having a ton of targets early and not having a ton of 100-yard games. I think Ladd McConkey's at wide receiver 11, late second round. I'm okay taking a shot on that because I've probably taken a guy that I feel really sure about in the first round. I'm willing to gamble on Ladd McConkey this season, and that is a change from where I was last year because I was not on the bandwagon that the rest of this show was with him last season. But I am right now.
Yeah, once again, we all agree. I don't know how this keeps happening, but it is. So, if anything, he's either just right, which is what my answer was. So I said we unanimously agree, or I would say he's a little bit underrated because let's factor in the idea here that while he doesn't jump off the page as a red zone type of wide receiver, he had 7 touchdowns last year. The reason why I thought this guy could be the next coming of Cooper Kupp is because I thought he's a guy who could line inside, outside, but because of the way he runs routes, be a true weapon in the red zone. I would not be surprised if this is a guy who can get double-digit touchdowns. You guys talked about the volume. The volume change wasn't because McConkey was earning more targets towards the second half of the season. The volume changed because the volume itself actually changed in the Chargers offense. Let me give you an idea here. First 4 games of the year, because the Chargers had a week 5 bye. First 4 games of the year, Justin Herbert was averaging just under 23 pass attempts a game. I'll say that again. Averaging just under 23 pass attempts a game, Justin Herbert. He goes to 32 passes per game post-bye, so week 6 to 17. And 32, by the way, that's normal. That's an NFL normal. It's not like they went like pass first the second half of the season. They went balanced attack, and they started winning games off of that, which makes me think they'll continue that again this season. And then from that little stretch, that's when McConkey was the wide receiver 12 points per game basis that we talked about there. So not only is what he did last year replicable, well, Josh Palmer departed, so Trey Harris can just come in and take those targets. Like, he's not necessarily going to come in and take away attention from Ladd McConkey here at all. All we need is for Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh, and this offense to stay balanced like they did in the second half of the season. And then McConkey going into his second year here, developing more rapport with Justin Herbert, definitely going to be the favorite target. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him go from a 25% target share to pushing 28. And if he pushes 28, now we're talking 130 to 140 targets there. And now we're talking elite wide receiver 1 numbers. So if anything, I think he could be underrated, but he's just right. Because I will say him and Garrett Wilson, there is a true tier break between the top 12 wide receivers and the next group. And they kind of round out that next tier. So I'll say just right for now. Let's dive into Travis Kelce. This might be the last player we talk about, but let's get into the old man himself. We're talking tight ends, right? ADP, tight end 6, 90th overall. Travis Kelce is no longer worth drafting in the first 3 rounds. I did not think I'd ever see the day. Even Taylor Swift could not prevent him from falling this far. By the way, who was singing at the tight end university camp.
Yeah, took the stage at tight end. You had a girl. Get something.
Oh, that was hilarious. All right, but Chase, Travis Kelce, tight end 6, 90th overall. Is that underrated or overrated?
Yeah, I think it's dead on. I'm okay with that. He is, like you said, he's not a top 3 round or a top 3 capable, I don't think anymore, tight end in the league. He's still going to be Patrick Mahomes, BFF. He still is going to be on the field for every down because he can play the complete game. And I think he's still savvy at what he does. He's just not quite the exact same, athlete that we saw several years ago. And we talked about it when we talked about Patrick Mahomes. We expect to see, hopefully, unless the law gets involved, Rashee Rice, or unless Rashee Rice gets the law involved again, we expect to see Rashee Rice. We expect to see a little bit more out of Xavier Worthy earlier in the season than we did last season. They will have Hollywood Brown back. He's an injury risk, but they will have him back. Their running game will be healthy with Pacheco this season, in theory. So with all of that going on around him, and with him in decline, I don't see him being better necessarily than that. I could see him finishing his tight end 5. Yeah. Like we said, after you get past that top 3 of Bowers, Kittle, and McBride, it's all a toss up anyway. And there's no reason Travis Kelce couldn't accidentally fall in there, but yeah, he's dead on for me. I'll take him at 6 or 7.
All right, Adam, what about you?
I think that unfortunately, he is slightly overrated. I don't think it's by much, but I think it's a spot or 2. I think he's closer to 8 than he is to 6. For me, he's got the volume, and the volume is what makes it difficult. But boy, he was so inefficient with it, and he looked rough, like as an athlete. I mean, you know that I've given my criticisms of Mark Andrews as an athlete last season on tape. I think he looked more sluggish than Mark Andrews. I actually do think that I would value Mark Andrews higher going into next season than Travis Kelce. I think Jonnu Smith I would value higher than Travis Kelce going into next season. LaPorta, T.J. Hawkinson even I would probably value higher than Travis Kelce going into next season. I struggle with him. He's someone who faced a sharp decline in the red zone. He is someone who the best weapons on this team compete for the exact same targets, the ones short over the middle.
Yep.
In my opinion, if I can throw to Rashee Rice in that portion of the field, I'm going to do that instead. If I can give it to Xavier Worthy underneath and let him go run the ball, I'm going to do that instead. If I can dump it to one of the running backs out of the backfield, I'm going to do that instead. So then at some point, it's like, okay, you're the trusty move the chains guy, and you're going to get a lot of targets because of that, but you're getting the least valuable targets in an offense that wants to go down the field more. It's a struggle for me to see him being what he has been throughout his career. So I can't do it. I think he's a tight end 1. He's going to get the volume, and the volume could carry him closer to 6 or even higher. But if he needs to either get above 8 yards per reception, which once you start trending down, it's hard to start trending back up at his age, or he needs to get more touchdowns. He needs one of the two, and it's hard to see someone his age do either.
Lowest yards per target of his career by almost 2 yards.
But the same thing was the season before. It went from 12 to 10 to 8. So it's linear, right? If it's a one season off thing, then I'm willing to have a conversation. But it's back-to-back years where it's dropping. When your quarterback is also dropping in back-to-back years.
Yeah, I mean, all that's fair too. So this is gonna be the first time that we all disagreed. Jay said just right. Adam said overrated. I'm gonna say slightly underrated. Now, not underrated from the tight end perspective. I think tight end 6 is right. I think he's a little bit underrated from the fact that he's going in the 9th, 10th round at 90th overall. That's where he's a little underrated at. I'm okay taking Travis Kelce in the 7th or 8th round. Despite all the career low efficiencies that you guys mentioned, career low touchdowns, career low yak yards, career low broken tackles, career low ADOT, everything across the board, he still had 133 targets, still had 97 receptions. Like, they may just feed him. Now, part of that could be Rashee Rice, but even before Rashee Rice went out due to injury, he was still showing a 25% target share. That is elite for tight end. So that had really nothing much to do with it. And let's not forget, too, going into the season, Travis Kelce was banged up in training camp. From all reports, we'll see if it's true or not, take that with a grain of salt, is that he looks like he's back to at least somewhat version of himself athletically, and he's fully healthy. If he can get through training camp fully healthy, he may hit the ground running, kind of like what happened to Mark Andrews, in my opinion, a little bit faster than what we saw last season. And if this is an offense that does score more points, does set up more big plays, does get into the red zone more, well, then he could maybe get a couple extra touchdowns out of that too. I'm not going to be comfortable drafting Kelce any lower than tight end 6, any lower than the 9th round. So I say he's slightly underrated. Chase, what are you going to say?
Well, and I was going to say too, let's not forget that there was all kinds of questions immediately, surrounding the Super Bowl and after the Super Bowl of whether he was going to come back or not. Was this going to be his last year? Whatever. If this turns into, if privately, if they know that this is like last ride type situation with him, he and Patrick might just try to ball out too. So yeah, I mean, that volume, I don't expect his volume to drop at all. And so even he can afford to be inefficient if he's still catching 73% of 130 plus targets. He can afford to be inefficient and still score you tight end 6 types points. So yeah, I'm fine with him at 6 at least.
Tight ends can bounce back. Tight ends can't. We've seen it. Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez. These are guys that 38 years old were still top 5 tight ends after both of them having inefficient years before. So I'm not going to roll completely out in Travis Kelce's case, but that is going to do it for today's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We are going to have a July 4th theme next week, talking about some players that we're going to be breaking free from, or players who have broken free from other situations. Can't wait to talk about that. Chase is going to be leading the way. Make sure you guys check out Operation Domination Football, your favorite podcast app, and subscribe, to our YouTube channel on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network at FF Advice Net. We'll see you guys real soon.